All right. All right. So it is 3:01 here in North Carolina, in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, here in the United States of America. And so we're going to get started with this little 30 for 30 stories of victory. So we want to start by just taking a moment to express some gratitude. So first of all, for me, on a personal level, it is just a huge honor to be able to be one of 30 people asked to speak for National Recovery Month and for the Recovery 2.0 community. When I look at the folks that are a part of this journey, this 30 messaging, 30 stories that are being presented, and I look at the lineup and I just go, wow, like, it just amazes me to be a part of that particular cohort, if you will, or quorum. So that's an amazing, some of my teachers are here, some of my peers from Recovery 2.0 coaching are here, some of the people that I've worked with are here, and then people I don't know. It's just been, it's just amazing. It's just wonderful. So I want to shout out to Recovery 2.0 and to Tommy for the request and for giving me this opportunity to speak. I also want to thank a whole host of people that come before me. So I'm not going to get into a long thing, like let's do 20 minutes of thanking everyone who's ever made it possible for me to be here today. But if you'll just take a moment with me to just think of maybe one person who's made it possible for you to be here today. And see if you can allow that sense of gratitude to arise within you as it's arising within me, as I feel into that reality. Recognizing that I did nothing so much on my own as be carried by those that made it possible for me to be here. And then before I start, I also want to make my apologies. So I am working as a part of my personal recovery and growth and maturity to change the languaging that I use in my life. And I just always know that my story is a part of my life, and I lived in a profane world. So if perhaps in the course of my sharing here today, something profane is expressed, I apologize in advance. And if that's something that's going to upset you, I'm giving you what's known as fair warning, letting you know now, so that you can have your speed dial on for your sponsor or partner and call them and talk it through. Okay. And with that, I'll invite everyone to join me in a brief centering, just a brief centering. Let us land. Let us bring ourselves, into this place, into this space. Come into your body, because our bodies are always in the present moment. So let us come into the present moment by coming into the body, by acknowledging the breath, finding the in-breath, noticing how the breath appears just as it's needed, directly underneath the nostrils. And allow that full inhalation to come in, noticing the sensation of the breath in the nostrils and in the subtle changes of the body as the breath comes in and goes out. And taking a moment to anchor our attention at that place in the body where the inhalation begins. I invite us to land in whatever way makes sense for us. Maybe you want to put your feet flat on the floor and feel yourself grounded. Maybe you want to bring your hands to prayer at your chest and lay your thumbs lightly against your breastbone. And for me, this is a metaphor for the work of my life is in between my palms and my fingertips. And by laying the thumbs against the breastbone, I can infuse that work with the beat of my heart. And so finding the present moment in this way, I'll set an intention for myself, a simple intention to be present as best I can, to be honest as best I can, and to be grateful as best I can. And with that simple intention in mind, I'll invite everyone to join me in a full inhalation and a full exhalation. Clear the space and begin. Now I come into this from the experience of several 12-step fellowships. And 12-step fellowship, we're taught that when we tell our story, we're supposed to tell briefly what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now, or as I call it, the me, the mess, and the message. And so I'm going to flip that paradigm a little bit, because I find that because of the nature of my disease, I tend to spend too much time in the me and not enough time in the message. So I'm going to start by flipping the paradigm, which you guys taught me how to do in these rooms. And I'm going to start with the message. And the message is, this is it. This is it. This moment is it. This is what we have. If you find yourself here, know that it is not by accident. There are no coincidences. You are here because you're supposed to be here. For whatever thin thread of life that pulsed through you to end you up here in this moment, know that there is no coincidence about that. And that this moment is the moment that you've been waiting for. That we have been waiting collectively and individually for this moment to be here. And that this is what it is. And so if you are thinking like I used to think that, like this all makes sense at some point in the future when the sun is shining like it is somewhat behind me in this backdrop that I got going on, and the band was playing and your favorite song was coming on and your friends were there and they were smiling at you with love, and all that was the moment when it was all going to be real. Now, know that this is that moment. And so the question then becomes the question of recovery, and that is, what you going to do? What you going to do? And then the other side of this coin is that this is also, that this is what we get. We get to keep coming back to this moment, utilizing the tools and the techniques in the community and the support that we have to find ourselves back in this moment over and over and over again. And if you're like me, you got 17 to 20,000 breaths a day to practice that. And if you're like me, if you get 10 or 12 of them to be actually conscious breaths where you're actually aware, then to me, that's a victory. I set my timer and my clock to go off every hour at the top of the hour so that I can take at least one conscious breath in every hour. And I can claim that victory. You guys taught me to claim progress. Progress is progress, no matter how small, and we claim progress. And so I claim that progress. I went years and years and years without taking a conscious breath. And so to take one conscious breath in an hour is a huge victory, and it's changed the arc of my life and transformed me entirely. And so know that if you are struggling with any of the big six, which if you're not familiar with Recovery 2.0, we deal with the big six here. We don't confine our remarks to our problems with a particular substance. We deal with drugs, alcohol, money, sex, relationships, and technology. And if you don't have a problem with any of those things, please put your name and number in the chat window. I want to work with you. I will call you immediately after this. And if you have a problem with any of those things, know that that problem is resolvable, that there is a solution, that it is available to you, not just to the rest of us, but to you. And that you have found a place where that solution exists. And you simply need to open your ears, your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your senses, to feel into how that might land for you. And landing in yourself can land into freedom from that particular addiction and be here. Now, I'll talk a little bit about what it was like and what do we talk about for newcomers. If you're new to this and you don't really know how to utilize this community and utilize the tools and techniques that are available to you, and to utilize the relationships that are available to you in order to support yourself in your recovery, let me talk a little bit about that first. And so the things that I was taught when I first came in the rooms of NA and AA back in 1985 have not changed. And those are very simple. Find meetings. Don't do this alone because it's difficult to do alone. In fact, I don't know anyone that can do it alone. We need each other. And so find meetings, and there are r20.com/meetings. There's 35 or so meetings a week in this community alone. And I can just tell you that in the other fellowships, AA and NA, there are 24/7. There's a meeting somewhere online at every hour of every day that ends in Y. And you can find that. And so find meetings and go to a bunch of different meetings regularly, like each day, right? 90 meetings in 90 days if you're brand new. And you're going to different meetings to find the meetings that resonate with you. And then you stay in those meetings that resonate with you, because each meeting is a little different. And you'll find that some will resonate more than others. You'll find the ones that resonate with you. And those become a pattern of new behavior, because this is a behavior modification program. That's all it is, a behavior modification program. If I talk to people all the time, I tell them very simply, they tell me, what's your story of recovery? I say, it's very simple. I used to do these things. I don't do those things anymore. Now I do these things. And then from there, we can talk about how that happened. But I basically learned what you guys taught me a long time ago, which was I needed to act my way into a new way of thinking. I couldn't think my way out of my dilemma. I needed to learn how to act differently. And then by acting differently, I got into a way of being able to access new connections inside my body and inside my mind. And that allowed me to create some new patterns of thought. And from there, and reinforcing, integrating, and refining and moving on, right? You go to those meetings, 90 meetings in 90 days, you find one of those meetings that really hits home with you. That's your home group. You go there regularly and consistently. People get to know you, you get to know them. If you don't show up, they call to reach out to find out if everything's okay. You start to develop an understanding that you are in relationship to someone. This is me. I'm saying you, but I should be speaking for me. This is how I did this. This is what I have to share. This is what worked for me. You guys told me to do these things, and I was so broken and so tired and so despairing that I was willing to do this stuff, even though it made no sense to me at all, even though I didn't believe most of what you were telling me. I just knew that whatever I was doing, I had been done with for years. And yet I kept doing it anyway, because I didn't know a different way. And when I landed here, my ears were open enough to hear you say, why don't you try this? Try and see what happens. And I did. And so I found a home group and I went regularly and I got into service. Now in this virtual world, service is a little different than it is in the physical world, but you can still be of service. And part of that is just showing up regularly and participating when you show up. I learned that I had to participate in my own recovery. I had to share a little bit. I couldn't just come there and listen to you guys talk. Like that wasn't really getting everything I needed to get. Like, okay, that's nice. And I believed that. And I started to open my ears to trust, and my body to trust, and my heart to trust, and believe that you guys were actually telling the truth when you shared. And besides, you looked like you were having fun and you were smiling, and I wasn't doing any of that, you know, but I wasn't really sure. And I had to learn that I had to participate in my own recovery by sharing my own story, no matter how painful it was at the time, in order to feel into a different way of being and to recognize that, oh, I could let that go. But I couldn't let it go until I could share it. And so you find a home group and you begin to share and you begin to be of service, you become a trusted member, right? And then you get what's called a sponsor. Now, I don't particularly like that word because it sets up a hierarchical relationship and it's not definitionally accurate, but I ain't changing 85 years of tradition. But I will say I found a partner or a guide, someone to help me to work the steps and efforts. Because the meetings are wonderful and fellowship is great, but what I have found is that recovery comes from participating in a process of change. And for me, the 12 steps of fellowships was that process of change. The 12 efforts, as we've recategorized them here, are the same 12 steps. We just changed some language to make it more accessible and more empowering and maybe a little clearer. But it's all the same process of learning how to live one day at a time in a different manner than we did before. And so that required an experienced partner, an experienced guy. And so I got a couple of those over the years. I've had 4 of them. And I've worked the steps in a formalized fashion with those partners over the years. And I learned how to process life in moment by moment in a different way than when I got here. And that has made the difference, because that process has allowed me to handle everything that has come up in all the years that have gone by there. Right? And so my story is one that it's cautionary tale. So I want to talk a little bit about, like it doesn't end there, it begins there. That's the beginning. So that's early recovery, and you find a community and you find a fellowship and you find a process and you find some people that you trust enough to listen to, and I found some people. Speaking for me again, so I can tell you what you need to do. I don't know what you need to do. I know what I did. I found some people that I was willing to listen to. I found some people I was willing to trust enough to change some of my behaviors. And I just started feeling my way into this process. And I got into service and I served in a number of different capacities. And I was really sort of gung-ho about the whole fellowship thing. And, because my life had gotten so much better in a significant way. All of the things that I had always wanted started to happen, And so when I got here, I had nothing except my despair and a bunch of court cases over my head. and I began to work through the process of, building some kind of life where I could be what's known as a productive person in the society, where I could actually participate in life in some way other than scuffling around trying to find what I wanted and needed for the day. And so I developed an opportunity to be a person that could hold a job, that could be in a relationship, that could pay their bills on a regular basis, that could, go to school and learn a skill, get a better job, participate in another type of community, move through life, have some children, raise those children, all of those things, find a community of spiritual worshipers and be a part of that community, be of service in some way in the world. All of those things happen. And all of those things were not the answer to my underlying problem. It turns out that, as the texts in the big book say, that my problem underlying everything was not a substance issue. It was a spiritual problem. And that spiritual problem reared its head in a couple of different ways. Now, by way of expectation, I have 30 to 40 minutes of talk, of which I'm 18 minutes into. So this is exercise in self-editing, okay? I could do 40 minutes on my first drunk, okay? So we're not gonna do that. So I'm just gonna talk generally about some of the things that happened in my experience as a means of providing, a little bit of insight into what I think is useful for people to take away. And then, if people are interested in the dirty details, you can read the memoir, you can call me afterward and we'll talk through that. But my experience is cautionary in that I want to tell you that working the 12 steps and being in the fellowships of NA and AA and ACA and ACOA and CODA was not enough for me. I did 12 to 15 years of hardcore, being in fellowship, and then I faded from that a little bit, and I had a life, and I had kids, and I had a corporate job, and I had a place in the church, and I was busy doing my life, and I got away from some of that. And then I found yoga, and this yoga thing was a huge change for me, because yoga made me recognize that there were parts of the experience of recovery that I was still missing. So I'm 15 years, 17 years clean and sober, and I'm still missing something key. And I get on my mat, and the first day I'm on my mat, and somebody's given the instruction of how to find the posture called downward facing dog, and then they say, and now I want you to remember that downward dog is a position of rest. And I don't know, there's no downward dog, but you're basically in a push-up position with your hips held high. So it's an inverted V. And my arms are shaking, and sweat is literally dripping off of my chin and puddling on my mat. And I look over at this person next to me, and she's just hanging out, breathing lightly, and I look over to my other side, and there's this guy, and he's just hanging out, breathing lightly. And I'm realizing, apparently I have some things to learn. I didn't know how to be in my body. I did not know that I could have done all of the things that I had done in my life and not have an awareness of what was going on in my body. And so that thing I said at the beginning here about knowing that your body is always in the present moment, I didn't learn that until I found yoga. I didn't learn that till I began to feel into what the experience of being present was. I had no clue. I had this concept that I'm just, totally here, man, like, keeping it real. And I had no sense of a felt experience. I met my teacher, and he always talks about, now have a felt experience of this, have a felt experience of that. And I would just be blank. I would be sitting on there going, what are you talking about? I'm here, ain't I? No. And what I learned from yoga is that I was here, but I was not here. I had no felt experience of all of these things. And when I began to understand that, I began to understand why some of my other challenges in life existed. Because I'd had these amazing experiences in my early life and in my using of drugs. So I'll talk a little bit about my chemical research days. I was into pharmaceutical research for a number of years, and it was never about so much getting loaded and getting out of whatever was happening, although there was a part of that. I'd had an unhappy life, and I was not really, in a place that was real pleasant. And so it was good to get out of that. But most of my searching was at that. It was a search for something that I had heard about somewhere early in life or read about somewhere in life. And these other people seem to be having these experiences of this thing called bliss, and this thing called joy, and this thing called connection, and this thing called wonder, and this thing called magic. And I wasn't getting any of that in my existence. And so I went looking for it all over the world. And I went to look for it in places where apparently it didn't exist, because I never found it. So either my searching was, inaccurate in the way that it was set up, or I was in the wrong place looking. And it wasn't until I found these rooms and found myself on the mat one day having an experience that, was totally unexpected, that I realized that, oh, this is a piece that has been missing. And so I thought, well, good, now I found it, I got yoga. And so I went to some training, and I became a yoga teacher at my local Y. And then I went to some further training so that I could be a teacher beyond my local Y. And then subsequently I've done some more training so that I can be a teacher. And I found in all of those trainings that while the physical felt experience aspect of yoga, the movement modality of yoga, the philosophy of yoga, the spirituality of yoga was wonderful and freeing and enlivening and enlightening, in and of itself, it wasn't enough either. That I needed to have both. So to shorten up the story a little bit and get to the nut of it, I had in 2017, I would have had 32 years clean and sober from drugs and alcohol. And I found myself in complete breakdown and despair. Another dark night of the soul, another bottom, as we call it around here. And it was as painful as the bottom I had when I first got in the rooms trying to recover from drug and alcohol addiction. And it was probably more painful because I was not expecting that. I was not prepared for that. I was not, I was feeling like, what are you talking about, man? I got all this clean time, and I've been living this great life, and I did all these things. And it was just one of those understanding at a deeper level that what we have, as it says in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, one of my favorite lines in the Big Books of Alcoholics Anonymous, says, what we have is a daily reprieve, contingent upon the maintenance of our spiritual condition. I had to look up those words. So I got an education in the rooms, if nothing else. I had to look up contingent and what contingent meant. And it basically depends upon. So if then, so what I have is a daily reprieve. And a reprieve was, what's a reprieve? Oh, a reprieve is just that. It's a break. I get a relieving break. I get a break each day if I maintain my spiritual condition. Well, when I got to the rooms of fellowship, I had no idea what a spiritual condition was. I knew I didn't have one, but I had no idea what it consisted of or what it looked like. And I thought I had built one because I'd been around here doing the things that you guys had asked me to do, and I'm serving in a way that I felt was useful. And then my life had, circumstances of my life had changed, and I had, done the things that I needed to do in society that they tell us to do, go and get a job, man. I got a job, and I went to work for the corporate world, and I produced a whole bunch of PowerPoints and built a lot of things and learned a bunch and thought I had it. And what I realized at that point in 2017 was, oh, I missed something really key here. It's about this connection to the present moment. My teacher said, heal your connection to the present moment, and you heal your connection to yourself. And by doing that, you heal your connection to the world at large. And since I had no idea where the present moment was and no idea how to feel into myself, that was a process that took me some time. And what I learned looking back at this experience from 2021 was that, oh, I needed to learn that in a visceral way. So what I say now is that on April 2nd of 2017, I had a felt experience of what it is like to not have a relationship to the present moment, to not have a relationship to self, and to not have a relationship to anything larger than me. And it was a scary and shocking experience, because here I thought I've got all this time and I'm just this, time is not an arbiter of the quality of our recovery. Time doesn't mean anything. Time is not even linear. So I won't get into that because we don't have time. But anyway, so I had this experience of having to recognize that, oh, now what do I do? So fellowship, 12 steps, the program, that didn't work. And I've been to 6 of those things. And I'll give you some dates here before we leave. Yoga and teaching yoga and being a certified, didn't work. And I had to kind of recoup and restart. And I had to reacclimate myself to, oh, I need to go back into the rooms and reconnect with the roots of my recovery, remembering that what I have is a daily reprieve contingent upon the maintenance of my spiritual condition. And that in the rooms of recovery, in the rooms of the fellowship, is where people like me with my condition are. And then I had to go back into my yoga teaching and get back on my mat and reconnect with the fact that, oh, I'm here to experience in my own body, in my own spirit, in my own mind, what the present moment connection is like, so that I can then know that. And then I can teach what I know, because I can only teach what I know. I can't teach what you know. I can't teach what my teachers know. I can't teach what I'd like to know. I can only teach what I do know. And so I had to go find that and feel into that and be a part of it. And so I had to do those things. And so what I say is that, I had that felt experience. And I love in Brene Brown's book, The Gifts of Imperfection. And she wrote in this book about her experience having what you said was a breakdown. And then in the editing process, she went back, and everywhere in the book where she wrote breakdown, she had put a strike through. And underneath it, she wrote spiritual awakening. I just think that's a wonderful way to sort of reframe that experience. So out of the depths of my despair and dissolution in my suicidal ideation, rather than do that, I just decided that I can manage one more day, one more breath. And so I did manage one more day and one more breath. And then from this point, I can look back at that and say, oh, now I can go back to April 2nd, 2017, and I can cross out, suicidal breakdown, and I can put in spiritual awakening. I needed to crack open in a different way so that something else could emerge, that something could come forth in a way that could be of service, not only to me, but to others. And what has happened for me since is, what happened in that moment is that I recognized that my experience and strength and hope was not being a benefit. I mean, maybe to my partner in life and maybe to my children in some way, shape, or form. But beyond that, that I hadn't been available in a way that allowed anything that I knew to be true to be of service to someone else. And that I learned, and then this part of this is I got a whole lot older. So, there's a lot of years since 1985, okay, when I was young, 20-something and knew everything, and then I became this, 2017, I was 60 years old, and I became a 60-year-old that knew nothing, and now I'm a little old. Oh, by the way, today is my birthday. So I'm now 64, and I know one or two things. And one of the two things I know is that what I was taught in the military early on in life is very true. If you want to know if you're a leader, turn around. If you see somebody following you, you're a leader. Well, in 2017, I turned around, there was nobody standing. There was nobody following. And so that was a key lesson in life. And so I wanted to be, there was something in me that called to be different than that. It called to want to be able to have the experiences of my life. For whatever reason, I have always felt like the experience of my life were designed to be of some use. Otherwise, what's the point, right? And when I was much younger, I always was hanging out with older people, and I always felt like, well, when I get there, it'll be clear. 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 Well, I got to be 60 and I was there and it still wasn't clear. It's like, okay, so I'm not sure what any of this is about, but I know I still feel this way. I still feel like there's got to be some rationale for the things that have happened to me, or the things that I have caused to happen to me, or the things that have occurred in my life, there has to be some rationale for that. Because otherwise I'm left with, what is the point of this, existence? If our experiences are designed by an entangled and mesh universe, or a loving higher power, or divine will, or whatever you choose to believe, or if they're just random occurrences of an uncaring, unseen greater force, it doesn't matter. The point is that value to me is that they have some use for someone else. And so I had to figure out for myself, what does that mean? What does that mean in terms of how can I be present? How can I be available for others? How can I share what I know in a way that helps someone else to either, find an insight for themselves, or learn something that they, might not have learned, or to be able to see their way through a particular experience that they're having a difficult time with, because that's what happened for me. I mean, you guys told me about how you did life. And as you told me about how you did life, I realized that, oh, shit, I don't really do a lot of things that other people do. Like, maybe I need to change my approach. Like, maybe I don't know everything. And maybe it might be useful to say, oh, dude's just like me. He did this. It worked for him. Maybe it'll work for me. And that's what you guys taught me in the fellowships. And then when I went to yoga, and you guys, got me on the mat, and you said, like, okay, downward dog is done like downward dog. like, no, Brian, you don't do downward dog with one leg and one arm. Downward dog, like, follow the form and allow the function to happen. And so as a result of that experience of having gone through that sort of dissolution and living through it, so all of us have this thing. I mean, all of us have this moment, right? I mean, we talk about this in the rooms, right? We all have a bottom, right? And the question is, do we get through it or not? And so I was fortunate, because I'm very familiar from my life of being at places where constant pain is not a place of comfort and to hang out. And so the idea of ending your life to end the pain, to me, that's a logical upgrade, okay? When I've got nothing but pain and despair and no way out of that pain and despair, and, when that is the place that I'm living, then living is the problem. And so, it's just the grace of this universe, of this God, of this, living will, that I get to be here. I remember when I was in the field early on in my addiction, and I was tired of being an addict. I was just tired of being an addict, and I was tired of having to do what I had to do every day to stay loaded, and I was tired of that existence, and I couldn't see any way out, and I wanted to go out. And I was out in the field, and I had my bottle full of pills, and I was popping them on my way out, and I was on my way out, and I was just done. I was just done, and something happened, and I can't explain it to this day, but I was done, and I was on this conscious trail to this. I'm done. I don't need this anymore. I want to be out of this. And something happened. Something happened that said, no, you can't do that. You ain't done yet. So that was my first experience with that. And then when I first got into rehab, and I'm going to wrap this up here because I'm running out of time, and I'm going to leave some time for people to ask questions and spend that, but I'll wrap this up. When I got into rehab in 1985, and I got 21 days of a 28-day program. They let me have 21 days because I had Medicare. I had Medicare because I'd been in the service. See how the thin line works? Now, I'm a dedicated person of peace, but I needed a job, and I needed to get out of my little town, and the service offered me a way out, so I went into the service. So there I am, little peacenik Brian, learning how to put a bullet in somebody with a machine gun and with a rifle and with a .45 pistol, and jumping out of airplanes and running around the streets hollering things like, I want to be an airborne ranger, and doing the things that I needed to do in order to survive in that environment. And so what was I talking about? I was talking about that moment, right? So when I got out, I had that sort of benefit of that was that I had Medicare because I had served. And so fast forward many years, and I'm in total despair and dereliction and destitution, and I'm tired of being a drug addict, and I don't want to be a drug addict anymore, and I'm about to go to prison, and I don't want to go to prison, and I'm ready for something different. And I'm able to get 21 days in a hospital ward, to come out of this. And like 2 days into rehab, 2 days into detox, I'm sitting in this hospital room with these bright fluorescent lights and their shiny steel rails on the beds. We had beds with rails, so you don't, and I'm just totally clammy and twitching and sweating. And many of you are familiar with that feeling and being in that place, and this is my life. I live in this clammy, perspiring, uncomfortable, incoherent, despairing place. That's where I live, and I just had this thing. Something happened. And I had a palpable experience of my obsession and my craving being there, which is all I wanted, all I asked for. I just begged, just take the craving and the obsession. I can deal with the court cases. I can deal with being, dirty and, all that. I can deal with not having any relationship. I can deal with life on, I just please take the obsession and the craving. And it happened for me, And as my teacher says, when you know something to be true, you have to act on it. And so that moment sustained me for, years and years and years. I knew life was going to be difficult and it wasn't going to be easy. I knew that, I had a lot of work to do, but I also knew that I was going to be okay. And so knowing that I was going to be okay, I could lean into that. I could lean into that, sort of progress. There's progress. Progress is progress, no matter how small. We claim progress. I claimed that progress, and that sustained me through the years. And then when I had this 2017 event happen, and I was ready to go out again, I just couldn't. I couldn't. I had learned enough tools in my life to know not to have weapons around my house, and therefore, I just was in my house, having a bad day, a really bad day that went on for like a week. And, and just knowing that, okay, I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do as a 60-year-old person in life. My job's over, my kids are grown, I'm not going to get another job. It was clear the universe was not going to allow me to get another corporate job. And I didn't know what I was supposed to do, but I knew that, okay, I can't do that. So what am I going to do? And it's like, okay, I'm just going to get back up and put one foot in front of the other and figure out how to take this next breath and figure out how to allow something in and then let that sort of inform me. And so anyway, I'm going to wrap this up because, as I said, I could do 40 minutes on this, so, and that's not fair to everyone. So in honor of everyone's time, let's talk about time. So recognize that time just exists in this present moment, that this is a timeless moment. And my teacher keeps trying to teach me this. I keep trying to learn this. This moment is timeless. Time is not linear. Time is not something that accumulates or can be acquired or saved. Time is not something that you can put in the bank and get interest on. Time does not exist except as a measurement tool for us as people. But this moment is real. This moment is real. And so I need to recognize that and live into that and work with that. And that's what I have to work with. And if I can stay in that reality, then a couple of things. There are no coincidences. I keep saying that, right? There are only synchronicities and opportunities for connection. So for those that know me, know that I have a text circle. There are, several people who get a text from me every morning from a different reading. And today's reading, I'm just gonna, look, Tommy says, how much more evidence do you need? Okay, so here's a little evidence for y'all. Okay, so I open my book to a random page each day and I pull up, and depending on what book it is. So today's book, I open to a random page. Here's the first 3 lines. We need each other. We need the spaces we create together. And then I love this one. This is so real. We need each other's stories to understand our own. That was what came up this morning as I'm preparing for my, little birthday talk. Okay. And then as part of my text circle, I did a thing that I include my daily pocket prayer. So I have a modality that I use that I was using in 2015 through 2017 when I was in all that despair and life was difficult for me and I needed to show up. I was holding space for yoga 12-step recovery meetings at the time. And I was teaching yoga at a local studio up in Spartanburg near my house. And I needed to show up for those classes. I needed to show up for the, space holding. And I wasn't in any space to do that on an individual personalized basis. And so I was leaning heavily onto, these little things that I pulled together each morning. I put together a little pocket prayer and I'd stick it in my pocket. And when I was sitting and waiting for people to show up for Y12SR or show up for my yoga class, and I was feeling like I just can't be here and I don't know what to do, and I'm like, I'd pull that prayer out and I would, like look at that and I would let that carry me. So this is from today's pocket prayer. Today, I resolve to be present at the in-breath. Today, I will have faith that peace, wisdom, strength, and joy reside within me and cannot ever be destroyed. And there's more, but we don't have time for all that. So I'll just say that's a part of the daily. And then I was reading before the meeting. This is my last one, and then I'm going to take questions. I was reading before the meeting. I was reading this book by this Japanese author, and I was looking at the clock, and I'm worried about the time, and am I going to be able to finish the book in time, and all that kind of thing. And so I'm kind of half reading and half being nervous, and I need to get over there and get lined up. And no, I got time. I can finish this. And the wonderful thing about Kindle, it actually tells you how much time you have left. So it's like 8 minutes left in the chapter, 2 minutes left in the chapter. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is I'm stressing over this. This is the last line of the story. At this point, prayer seems like the only thing I can do. Probably. All right. With that, I'm going to invite everyone to join me as I bring my hands back to prayer. I'm going to take a full inhale and remind myself again that my work exists in my hands, in my own two hands. And that if I lay my hands near my heart, I may be able to place and inform and infuse my work with my heart. And as I leave, I'm going to parrot an intention that my teacher always lays out on me, to get bold and be bold. And that is that as I leave this little opportunity to share a little bit of my story with you, that I can set an intention that my efforts be a benefit, not just to me, and not even just to you, but perhaps my efforts can be a benefit to all beings. And with that, I'll invite you to join me in the Recovery 2.0 prayer, if you would. For those that know it, maybe you want to bring your hands to prayer at your chest, or maybe you want to put your arms out to your side like we're in a big group hug in this wonderful little verdant forest behind me, or maybe at Costa Rica on the beach. But wherever we are, however you are, if you'd like to, just repeat with me. Universe, thank you for putting us in the places you want us to be, with the people you want us to be with, doing the things you want us to do. Thank you for the joys and challenges of our lives. And if you have a benediction of your own choice, namaste, sat nam, amen. It's or the Recovery 2.0 benediction. Woo, woo, woo.